A Wrinkle in Time, a badly told summary. All right, kids, grab a blanket, grab a snack, and maybe grab a notebook because this book said science, but it actually meant full-blown cosmic mind bender. Today, we are talking about one of my personal favorites, A Wrinkle in Time. So let's get to know our characters. We begin with Meg Murry, who is just having a thoroughly miserable time. Meg doesn't really fit in school. She's extremely intelligent, really good at math, but we also learn very quickly that she is stubborn, impatient, and very quick-tempered, which often goes against her. At home, she lives with her mother, who is a renowned biologist by day, and spends her night cooking dinner over her Bunsen burner for her family. She has two twin brothers, Sandy and Danny, who are actually the only relatively normal kids in this book, considering that they are not natural-born geniuses. And we have her youngest sibling, Charles Wallace, who is arguably one of the most important characters in the book. I think Charles Wallace is about 5 years old, and he's known for being quite small for his age and disturbingly intelligent, which kind of freaks everybody out since he doesn't really say much. Why are people freaked out by the intelligence of a 5-year-old? No idea. People are weird. Now, the reason Meg is all angsty and up in her feelings is because of her father. Meg's father is a world-renowned physicist. He's into top-level stuff, and even the president consults him frequently. But we find out that he has been missing for years. Most of the outside world thinks that he abandoned his family, failed at all his experiments, and ran away, which is part of the reason Meg's having such a hard time at school with all these rumors and speculation. But the truth is, he was experimenting with something called a tesseract, a wrinkle in the fabric of space and time that allows instant travel across the universe. One day he used it and didn't come back, and no one except Meg's mother knew what he had really been working on, and even she didn't have much of an idea as to how he disappeared. Now, on a dark and stormy night, which is very literally how the book starts, a strange-looking woman named Mrs. Watson, who's dressed in a strange assortment of clothes and scarves and pillowcases, appears in their kitchen and confirms everything that we've talked about so far. She blows their minds by telling them that a tesseract is real. She explains what it is and tells them that Meg's father disappeared while using it. And then she just leaves. Soon after, Meg and Charles Wallace are joined by their schoolmate, Calvin. Calvin, for some reason, seems to show up wherever they go. He claims he's drawn to them by a feeling that he can't quite explain. Now, Calvin is the exact opposite of Meg, who is very socially awkward. Calvin is popular at school, and he's an athlete. But the truth is, Calvin has his own troubles, and that is really what connects him to Meg and Charles Wallace. He feels a powerful and inexplicable pull to the Murrays. This connection is the first clue that he's special, and that he has a natural talent for deep empathy and sensing things beyond the ordinary. Soon after, Meg, Charles, and Calvin, who we now realize are all very special little kids, are introduced to three cosmic beings who I like to call the Space Aunties: Mrs. Watson, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Witch. All three are very similar, but at the same time, very different in nature. They're more like cosmic entities than people, just for you to get an idea. Mrs. Watson is the most approachable and nurturing. She acts as a guide and protector to the kids. Mrs. Who speaks almost entirely in quotations from the greatest thinkers of our time because, as an ancient cosmic being, she finds it easy to use words that already exist and are well known to communicate. Mrs. Witch is the most powerful and the least human. She doesn't even take on a human form, only appearing as a shimmering presence who struggles to communicate in full sentences because her thoughts are too vast for simple, plain, and natural language. So yeah, our three space aunties. Our three space aunties recruit the three of these very special kids to fight an evil that we call the Black Thing. Yeah, I know, very creative. But the Black Thing is a spreading darkness that represents fear and the loss of individuality. And this mission also doubles as a rescue mission because the Black Thing is also the reason why Meg's father has disappeared. So using the tesseracts, they begin their journey and traverse space and time, tessering from planet to planet and having many adventures all the way. As they travel to different planets, they're eventually led to believe that Meg's father is on a planet called Camazotz. Camazotz is a world built on the concept of order and uniformity, but to the extreme. The planet is ruled by it, a massive disembodied brain that enforces absolute conformity and erases individual thoughts. Houses are identical, and even the children playing in the streets have to bounce balls in perfect rhythm. Mistakes are just not allowed. Meg, Charles, and Calvin go on and try and confront it so they can rescue their father. And they do succeed, but in the attempt, Charles Wallace is hypnotized by it, which it turns out is what it wanted all along. Because, like we've mentioned before, Charles Wallace is a very special little boy. In a series of unfortunate events, Meg is injured, she, Calvin, and their father have to escape, and they end up tethering to a different planet without Charles Wallace, who is still hypnotized by it, by the way, and being mind-controlled by it means he's not quite himself, he is an evil version of Charles Wallace. So they end up in Ixchel? They end up in Ixchel, a gentle world inhabited by soft, sightless creatures who help heal Meg and help the others recover. Now remember, all this while Charles Wallace is still on Camazotz, and Meg is understandably upset that they had to abandon Charles Wallace. Now before the three of them rescued their father, the three space aunties gave each of them some advice to help them on their mission. Meg's piece of advice was that her flaws would be her greatest assets. And she didn't really understand it then, but we're going to keep this little nugget of information for later. Once she's healed, the three space aunties land on Ixchel. And they decide as a group that Meg has to go rescue Charles Wallace on her own, which is absolutely terrifying, and the book does a really good job of portraying how losing individuality and falling into the rhythm of mindless obedience that it disguises as relief can be very, very scary. And so this really drives home why going to Camazotz on her own is really hard for her to do. But in the end, she gathers her courage and goes to Camazotz alone. She has a huge confrontation with it, who has inhabited Charles Wallace's mind, and so, plot twist, it's her brother who's trying to convince her to join hands with it. And the thing about it is that it makes you want to come to its side. It basically fights you by promising you an easy life and relieving you of the burden of thinking. Meg literally has to recite math and history facts just to fight against the waves of compulsion it emits just by being present. And just as it seems that she's about to lose to it, Meg remembers that little nugget of advice from earlier and embraces everything she's been told is wrong with her. Her anger, her fear, her stubbornness, and this is where Meg finally understands why her emotional flaws are so important. It cannot be defeated by intelligence because it is intelligence stripped of empathy and emotion. So she realizes that she can't save Charles with logic and reason, that she has to use emotion, namely love. So she tells Charles Wallace that she loves him, and this breaks the spell and the hold that it has on Charles Wallace. He's freed, and it is defeated. The Black Thing is weakened. Meg, Calvin, Charles Wallace, and their father return home together, changed but safe. And I guess the moral lesson of this story is that flaws aren't weaknesses, they are tools that you can use to succeed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is A Wrinkle in Time. If you guys like this summary, let me know if you'd like me to do the second book, A Wind in the Door. Alright, thanks guys, bye!